Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For tonight's lecture, we're delighted to welcome Dr. James Hamilton, curator, writer, and lecturer. James was university curator and honorary reader at the University of Birmingham from 1992 until retirement in 2013, and is currently a fellow of the Barber Institute at the University of Birmingham. James has lectured internationally on Gainsborough, Turner, Faraday, and the culture of 18th and 19th century Britain, and has contributed to programmes on BBC Radio 3 and 4 and BBC 1 television on the art of J.M.W. Turner. His books on English painters Gainsborough, Turner and Constable have been universally acclaimed, and we're delighted that they are the subject for tonight's lecture. Please welcome Dr. James Hamilton.
Very warm introduction, and thank you all for coming. I fancy I see Gainsborough in every hedge and hollow tree. Now, why did John Constable say that, and what did he mean by it? John Constable, aged 24, a young man desperate to get on as an artist against a difficult social background, was referring in a letter to a friend to what he saw on countless walks around his home village of East Bergholt, between Colchester and Ipswich, on the Essex-Sussex border. He was an energetic and powerful walker, and across his youth and early maturity, he travelled many miles on his feet, keeping his eyes and his mind open to whatever he might see, drawing it, at first, in the old-fashioned manner of the previous generation. But he was soon beginning to work in a way that gets to the heart of the poetry and expression of rural life, the swing and rhythm in the landscape around him, as he himself swings and paces in response to the rise and fall of the road ahead. You can see that already he has Gainsborough in mind here. Then, as now, the low, watery floodplain of the River Stour was dotted with trees and hedges, and there, and in its rolling higher ground around East Bergholt and Langham, were already being hedged and bounded as the first of the Enclosure Acts come into play. We may not think of Suffolk as having high ground, but my goodness, it has. And the walk up from the river to East Bergholt is you need all your energy to get up to the top. These are the last years of the 18th century, when there was constant change in Constable's local landscape. As a son and sometime employee of an innovative and enterprising miller, barge owner and merchant and his wife, he had a natural eye for the new, for the effects of technological advance, and was always alert to the smallest nuance of change in the landscape. So that's our bright young man, already yearning for means of expression and, of course, for recognition. Every hedge and hollow tree. Let's just recall the pictorial delight of hedges and hollow trees. They are a thrill to the eye and can lead the imagination on all kinds of adventures, as Arthur Rackham showed since the early 20th century, and as Rubens did in the 17th. Thomas Gainsborough, in his early Suffolk days, saw the poetry of hedges and hollow trees clearly, and expressed his delight at the cycle of arboreal life. So where is the link? Why did Constable make the comparison he did? What drove Gainsborough, and where does Turner come in? I'm going to take a risk, as Constable did, as Turner did, as Gainsborough did, and tell you not what perhaps you already know, but try to show you something of the hidden backstory of these great humans to reveal another perspective on what brought them together and what held them rooted in the course of Western art. Thomas Gainsborough was a man of strong emotion, vivid imagination, admirable self-assurance, a talent to perform, and occasionally a tempestuous temperament. Indeed, I have described him as Jerry Lee Lewis with a paintbrush, because he was rowdy, could get drunk, and played hours of music with his friends. There are many examples of temper outbursts, and here's one. Somebody he described as a gentleman near Ipswich commissioned a painting of gypsies beside their campfire. This was sometime in the early 1750s, when Gainsborough was in his late 20s and with a demanding wife and 2 little girls, and was struggling to make a reputation and a living in Suffolk. The gypsy family, its donkey, and 2 children arriving to join their companions, are on a high spit of sandy land, dominated by an oak tree in summer. Suffolk stretches away into the distance. We're looking at a classic pyramidal composition, so beloved of Rubens, Rembrandt, and the many other 17th century Dutch and Flemish painters who expressed rural contentment and hammered allegories of Christian subjects out of contemporary life. This is a rest on the flight to Egypt in fancy dress with variations. It is also classic early Gainsborough, of modest scale, deeply rooted in country traditions which was already behind the times, and a landscape in which the figures do not dominate, but they share an equal balance with their surroundings. Gainsborough was well versed in Dutch and Flemish art. By the early 1750s, he had spent a decade painting and learning to paint in London, had studied Northern European art as thoroughly as he could in collections and art dealers' shops in London and Suffolk, and may even have travelled to Amsterdam. He knew what he was doing. He was also, at this stage of his life, staunchly local. This was his landscape, his country people, his dream of a wandering life. But remember, we are all local, and we can all try to generate the intensity to express the character of our surroundings, place and people. And this afternoon, I saw just that being expressed in Bedford. The incisive and subtle portrait in the Cecil Higgins Museum of your local bookseller, Richard Wildman, drawn by your own estimable Michael Croker. Gainsborough had spent days, weeks on this campus when the jet called, and he, the commissioner, was ill-advised enough as to criticise the incomplete picture with some force. What he'd expected of the painting was no, but he said he didn't like it. So immediately, and in a fury, Gainsborough retorted, "Then you shall not have it!" And he picked up a knife and he slashed the canvas twice. The Ipswich gent never got this gentle picture of gypsies in the late afternoon sun, but instead he set off an extraordinary sequence of events that came inexorably to draw in both the young constable and Turner. Thomas Gainsborough, high-tempered, high-maintenance, and highly strung, was living in Ipswich with his wife Margaret, their 2 young daughters. He was running along a financial and emotional precipice, never quite knowing how he was going to feed and clothe his family. Margaret was stressed, demanding, and overbearing, and Molly and Peggy were both still under 5 and needy. He would be tempted into boozy nights out, and had not yet managed to get the traction he required to succeed as an artist. He was well liked, charming, and personable, and despite his irresponsibilities, was in some local demand as a portrait painter, always short of money. He might even have found fellow feeding with the gypsy family, pillar to post, hand to mouth, and they too always short of money, and even envious of their easy, or their apparently easy, way of life with no overheads or status to maintain. Status was important to the Gainsboroughs in Ipswich. Margaret, his wife, would keep reminding him that her father was a duke, Henry Somerset, the then deceased third Duke of Bedford. And she really needed Gypsy come back. So, at his sudden loss of temper, Gainsborough heard the door slam as his erstwhile patron stormed out, taking his money with him. But Gainsborough's good friend, the sensible engraver and level-headed local businessman Joshua Kirby, was nearby to pick up the pieces. Gainsborough gave him the damaged canvas, and Kirby took it home, mended it, and for the time being, that was that. 40 or more years later, John Constable, another young man on the wing, or trying to be with little immediate success, turned up in Ipswich asking questions like a detective inspector in an inquiry. He already knew Gainsborough's Suffolk landscapes and was enthralled by them. He'd been sent to Ipswich by his friend and mentor, the printmaker and publisher John Thomas Smith, to find out as much as he could about Gainsborough, to hear local gossip about him, and to discover how well he was remembered in Ipswich a decade after his death. This was a kindness and a helpful exercise to try to give Constable a feeling for the wider locality, for the social background of art in Ipswich, and an understanding of what might be achieved in a career as an artist. Constable will not have known about the damaged gypsy landscape, though he will have heard of Gainsborough's hot temper and seen Gainsborough's print of a variation of the same subject. He also knew Thomas Gainsborough as the national treasure he had by now become, the painter of grand portraits, and the artist who more than any other brought to a careless and dismissive world the elegance, charm, and human scale of soft rolling hills and pastures. Long before he went to London and experienced the sophistication and rigour of Royal Academy life and teaching, Constable was making drawings in the Gainsborough manner, under Smith's influence and on his own account. Moss-strewn cottages, nibbled thatch, enclosed vale and hedgerow. All these emerged into Constable's drawings and later into his paintings, directly from Gainsborough's legacy. He and Smith entered into correspondence, mainly about art, and about how to make it in a career as an artist. And it was at this point that he told Smith that in the landscape around East Bergholt, he fancied he saw Gainsborough in every hedge and hollow tree. I'll now park Constable here and introduce you to a small, shy, prickly, fair-haired 12 or 13-year-old boy, standing in the late 1780s in the parlour of a spick-and-span house in Bedford, beside the Thames, west of London. Around the walls of this smart new house, in the hall and up the stairs, were dozens of drawings and small paintings of landscape and people in landscape by Thomas Gainsborough. Among them was this actual painting, the landscape with the gypsies, which we've seen with its scars from its early damage and marble repair. That is an extraordinary coincidence. The house belonged to James Trimmer, the owner of brick kilns near Kew, and a wealthy supplier of building materials to London contractors. It happened that James Trimmer's wife, Sarah, was a pioneer of the education of children and an inspirer of the late 18th century Sunday school movement, and the author of portentous, admonitory, but also sympathetic books and tracts about youth and religion. More to the point, Sarah Trimmer was the daughter of Gainsborough's good friend Joshua Kirby, and had inherited his collection of Gainsborough's paintings and drawings. Mrs. Trimmer might have said to the boy, "They're the work of my father's dearest friend, Mr. Gainsborough. He lives at Schomberg House in Pall Mall. Very grand and splendid. He's not 15 minutes away from your from your father's barber's shop. That boy was Billy Turner, better known to us now as Joseph Mallord William Turner, the son of William Turner, the Covent Garden barber and wig dresser. Billy was in Bedford, but his mother was ill, and his father overstretched both in his barber shop and his private life. Billy had been sent to live with his mother's brother, a butcher with a shop in Brentford Marketplace. Farmed out from place to place, the boy now enjoyed the generous embrace of Mrs. Tremor, and came also to earn the loyal and lifelong friendship of her sons. Only 1 year separates Turner and Constable in terms of age, though in the scale of life chances and the grasping of opportunity, it was Turner who was better at it and benefited faster, deeper, and to more thoroughgoing effect than did Constable. Turner was 15 when his work was first shown at the Academy, and 24 when he was elected an associate. Constable had to wait until he was 26 before his first paintings were accepted to be shown at the Academy, and 43 when he won enough votes to be elected as an associate academician or ARA. The top status of Royal Academician was likewise rapid for Turner and long delayed for Constable. In their family lives, their paths were similarly contrasted. By the time Constable and Maria Bicknell married in 1816, Turner had, like Thomas Gainsborough, 2 daughters and a long-dumped Sarah Danby, his common law wife and a girl's mother, in favour of independence as an artist. He had no more children as far as we know, and made productive relationships with collectors such as Walter Fawkes and the Earl of Egremont, before moving in much later with his landlady, Sophia Booth. Turner was no family man. Constable, on the other hand, doted on his wife and children and loved home. He was uxorious to a degree, and after Maria died from tuberculosis and the strain of many pregnancies over their 12-year marriage, Constable became a mother hen to their 7 children, loving, attentive, and full of support and concern for the development of their lives to come. Turner would have nothing of this. In fact, he once said, "I hate married men. They never make any sacrifice to the arts, and are always thinking of their duty to their wives and families or some rubbish of that sort." So, back to our rootstock. What they had in common was the life and example of Thomas Gainsborough. There's a very important process going on here. It's one which is echoed generation after generation, in which the wisdom of age assists the enthusiasm of youth, and more specifically, in the profound effect which should connect teacher with pupil. Gainsborough was not Turner or Constable's teacher in any academic sense, but he was a kind of absent mentor. We just don't know, but there could certainly have been early contact between Gainsborough and Turner, as Gainsborough lived only a short walk to Maiden Lane in Covent Garden. He was always well groomed. He was a natty dresser, must always have been in need of barbering. Old William Turner's barber shop was halfway between £1 now and the Royal Academy, then at the end of the Strand, and he was patronised by artists, by lawyers and theatrical people who inhabited the law courts and theatres nearby. It's pushing it a bit to suggest that Turner's dad cut Gainsborough's hair, but somebody would have done. Gainsborough died unexpectedly in 1788 when Turner was 13 years old. So when he wasn't looking at Gainsborough's pictures in Brentford, he could have been looking at the back of Gainsborough's neck as his father cut the famous artist's hair. Possible connections might amuse. This early drawing by Turner, he would have been 15 or 16 at the time, rather on the right, can only be an expression of an early sight of a drawing or painting by Gainsborough. This can certainly have been a result of his seeing Sarah Trimmer's collection in Brentford. That much is clear. So we shouldn't try to stretch it to a meeting in a barber shop. So the connections to our rootstock are in Turner's case the workings of chance, and fascinating for that, while for Constable, they are the outcome of progressive rationality and the gradual following of advice and consequent revelation. In a nutshell, then, Gainsborough smashes the painting in a fury. He gives the damaged work, perhaps with some shame and regret, to his best friend. His best friend mends it and hands it up. His friend's married daughter inherits it. She happens to live in Bedford, where she buys her meat from the local butcher. The Bedford butcher has a shy little nephew who's been sent to live with him to help alleviate a family crisis. Gainsborough's best friend's daughter embraces the butcher's shy little nephew into her Sunday school ways of thinking and takes him into her house. He is transfixed by the paintings and drawings he sees there, and perhaps can't think why. However, the boy turns out to be something special. He is a youthful J.M.W. Turner, who nobody has heard of yet, although he has already surprised customers in the barber's shop with the extraordinary drawings his father has pinned up. My son is going to be a painter, old William Turner would repeatedly tell his customers, so there was no escape. J.M.W. would, of course, have come across Gainsborough's paintings sooner or later, but he didn't. He came across them first by chance, in Bedford, when he was 10 or 11 years old, in the home of his mother's butcher brother's customer. They were the customer's late father's friend's paintings, and although we might go as far as to speculate that her late father's friend had sampled the haircutting and wig trimming skills of the little boy's father, we do not have to. If those degrees of separation are not a series of chance events, what on earth are? John Constable's past, his rootstock, are of a different kind. His mother was always eager to show off her son's burgeoning talents as an artist to the grandees in and around her Suffolk village. Through her, he befriended the fabulously wealthy art collector Sir George Beaumont, who came down to Devon from time to time to see his old mum. Beaumont lent him prints and later drawings and paintings to copy. Let him take them away to do so. He said nice things about his work, and may have showed him the Gainsborough paintings and drawings that he owned. And Beaumont also owned this, Rubens' great shadow display landscape, in which, as in Suffolk, you can see for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. And almost walk every inch of the way. It's quite extraordinary. And that, the distance there, maybe about 6 inches or something like that on the actual panel, it's painted on panel, not on canvas. But you can feel that you can travel every little step of the way. Back as far, presumably, I don't know whether it's going to the sea or to the inland anyway. And that idea, that sense of, that expression of distance is one of the great, one of the great achievements of particular terms landscape painting. Anyway, Sir George Beaumont and John Constable may also have gone on sketching trips together as Beaumont was an amateur landscape painter. That will have been one route. Another, intertwined like ivy, was Constable's friend John Thomas Smith, already discussed. It was to Smith that Constable wrote, "I fancy I see Gainsborough in every hedge and hollow tree." I might add that as time went on, Smith became keeper of the print room at the British Museum, and here is his drawing of Turner looking through the prints. That's how close the circles of acquaintance were in early 19th century London. Thomas Gilbert was by now the lodestone for change in painting. And in this case, the expression which precedes and accompanies an understanding of nature. There's always somebody, think of the discovery of perspective, who changes everything. Think of the invention of cubism. That changed everything. Think also of Noah's decision to build a big boat when all about him mocked. If that wasn't a sign that he at least had noticed a change of climate was coming, I don't know what was. And here is the change that Gainsborough perfected, from idealised Italianate nostalgia with ruins to poetic, crepuscular, emotional, intensely English recollection of calm in tranquility. Your pupils here at Bedford School are the new agents of change. They rely on your wisdom to give them the space and the tools they need to live, to give their youthful enthusiasm rein. Wisdom of age certainly lifted me. A series of misjudgments took me to Manchester University to read mechanical engineering. But a group of 3 wise teachers saw that that was not my path, and so I eventually graduated with a degree in the history of art. But before Turner and Constable became fellow students at the Royal Academy, Gainsborough had long been universally praised, but at the same time sidelined at the Academy through high-handed behaviour in his latter years. I suppose this was in some way his reaction to the grudging acceptance that he was finding among his artist peers, their acknowledgement, even jealousy, of his genius. Like any rock star, Gainsborough ruffled a few feathers. Even the Academy President, Sir Joshua Reynolds, marginalised Gainsborough, but nevertheless rehabilitated him 4 months after his death in 1788, when Reynolds gave his annual lecture or discourse to students. Reynolds spoke of Gainsborough with affection and empathy, dedicating this particular discourse to the character of Gainsborough, his excellencies and defects. But not one to miss the opportunity to attach criticism to praise. Reynolds described his fellow artist as one of the greatest ornaments of our academy, and told his audience that my object is not so much to praise or to blame him, as to draw from his excellencies and defects matter of instruction. This proclamation of Gainsborough's genius from such a figure as Joshua Reynolds sent new waves of excitement and sparks of innovation through Academy circles. After the posthumous 3-day sale at Schomburg House in 1789, the art market became lively with Gainsborough's paintings and drawings. It was the backwash of this and the new visibility of Gainsborough's work in London dealers' shops and auction houses in the late 1790s, as well as in the homes of Suffolk and Essex collectors, that prompted both Turner's and Constable's interest and their instinctive appreciation of Gainsborough's work. The timing, I have to say, was perfect. As Gainsborough lay dying, his youthful and as yet unknown heirs were there, waiting in the wings. So off they go into their painting careers, at more or less exactly the same time at the turn of the 19th century, at more or less exactly the same age, and each with a more or less equal charge of an electrical boost from the work, experience, and zest for life of their extraordinary forerunner, Thomas Gainsborough. Here, again, is Turner as a 15 or 16-year-old, looking hard at Gainsborough and remaking him. And here he is, again, in a painting bought from Turner in 1808 by Lord Egremont for his collection at Bedford. But while Egremont was buying this Gainsborough-inspired painting when it was still wet, and straight off Turner's own gallery walls, Constable was still struggling with life as a young art student in London and getting nowhere fast. Nevertheless, Constable did have his opportunities. He had a wealthy uncle, his mother's brother, David Pike Watts, who had pots of money from a lucky inheritance. Inter alia, and perhaps at his nephew's urging, Pike Watts thought Gainsborough's great early landscape, Cornhard Wood, now in the National Gallery, and made it available for Constable to see and enjoy during his long period of development. And we must also not forget his exposure to Sir George Cromart's Rubens. So you can see this very clearly here, very visible in these early works by Turner and Constable, each one rooted in Gainsborough, either in homage or, as likely, with a certain intention of discovering what it was in Gainsborough that was so affecting and that touched in each of the young artists the pulse and the rhythm and emotion which Gainsborough had found in the Suffolk landscape and expressed in his paintings and drawings. In Constable's case, he had an uncle who owned this, and a friend who owned that, and what an extraordinary pair of paintings to be confronted with as a young artist. A little of what we know about Constable's youthful knowledge of Gainsborough comes from Sarah Trimmer's grandson, Henry Trimmer, the son of Turner's friend and executor, the Reverend Henry Scott Trimmer. Henry Trimmer Jr. told the journalist Walter Thornbury, the author of the first biography of Turner, that Gainsborough's paintings made Constable cry to look at them, and that no one at the present day could approach him. This observation comes as part of a long stream of anecdotes and insight from Trimmer about Turner's contemporaries, written up by Walter Thornbury in his Life and Correspondence with James W. Turner, published in 1861, 10 years after Turner's death. Young Trimmer also knew Constable in the latter's later life and knew something about both artists from his friendships, from exhibition visiting, and from the rudiments of painting that he had picked up by instruction from Turner himself. The young Trimmer, the son of Turner's executor, was the living link between Thomas Gainsborough, his great-grandfather's friend, James W. Turner, his father's friend, and John Constable, his own friend. It was in Hampstead in the 1820s when young Trimmer experienced Constable's loquacity, his great flow of words, and how he, Constable, would brave the worst weather, how he would sally forth into snowstorm on Hampstead Heath to sketch a tree. These are the entirely coincidental biographical connections between these two great painters and Gainsborough. Little would have been altered in their later artistic inheritance had these personal links not existed, but they do throw their achievements into relief and indicate how small, then, was the world they inhabited. Constable's mature feeling for Gainsborough comes from within, revealed most particularly for his notes for the series of lectures on landscape painting he gave in 1836. There he finds riches and sentiment within Gainsborough that touches the quick of his personality and emotion. The landscape of Gainsborough, he writes, is soothing, tender, and affecting. The stillness of moon, the depths and twilight, and the dews and pearls of the morning are all to be found on the canvases of its most benevolent and kind-hearted man. Constable is also writing about himself and his own aspiration here. Those three beats that he captures in Gainsborough, moon, twilight, morning. All that is seen in his own canvases. He goes on looking at them, we find tears in our eyes and know not what brings them. So the tears that Thornbury reported on came directly from the words Constable confessed in his lectures, and are the same tears that young Henry Trimmer witnessed. The questing and interrogative landscape paintings of Constable and Turner, and here you see is Constable Hayward, have their rootstock distinctly and surely in the foundational career of that Suffolk boy, Thomas Gainsborough. Thank you.
Do you have any preference, James, of the three? If you were asked to have one, Constable, Turner or Gainsborough, which one would you opt for?
This sounds like a balloon game. Who are you going to chuck out of the balloon? Oh my goodness, that's very difficult. Well, they were all, each one of them was put in, working, looking all the time. Everything, you can tell this particularly from Turner and Constable's sketchbook. In the Tate, in the print room of the Tate, there are I think 362 or something like that sketchbooks from all parts of his life. He kept them as a kind of diary. Very few. Many of them can be pinned down. Because he writes a little note of where he might be, Warwick or Naples or Paris or whatever. He does pin them down, and there are often clues within them that give them the date, so they can be put in order. But there's a great deal of evidence of him going back to a sketchbook, let's say of 1790 something, when one particular a sketchbook of a Midland and Northern tour, where he passed through Stamford, and there's a little drawing of Stamford Marketplace and so on going on. And then in 20 or 30 years later, he did a large series of watercolours of British towns and views called Picturesque Views in England and Wales. And there, his drawing of his watercolour of Stamford is based on a drawing made in the late 1790s. And this happens again and again and again. His tours, he travelled extensively in Britain. He went early on. He went up to well, first of all, he went into Wales. He went into Wales ostensibly in search of the birthplace of Richard Wilson, which I gather he found. But he made drawings of Welsh subjects there. Then in the 1790s, he went up to Scotland, went via Northumberland and Norham, and did his first watercolours and drawings of Norham Castle. Then he went up to Edinburgh and further north. And Norham Castle on Tweed became an extremely important subject for him. He painted in the 1800s, and he painted again, I think, in the 1820s, and then once more, and finally, no, not the 1820s, he painted in the 1830s, and then finally in the late 1840s, he painted again that wonderful pinky blue effusion of a misty castle with pale blue sky and a cow in the river reflecting in the flowing water. It was an extraordinary poetic subject. But his earlier paintings of Norham Castle, which were engraved and sold quite well, pleased him, of course. he was very fond of money. He made lots and lots of money selling books. In fact, before he was 21, he had to have trustees. This relatively humble barber's son, but wasn't that humble. He made his barbering business made a certain of money. It was popular and well attended. But before he was 21, he had to have trustees to handle the money he'd made. So he wasn't. He was good at. He was a good businessman. But when he went to Norham Castle the second time, I can't remember the date exactly, Independence War or 30s, he stood on the banks of the Tweed and he raised his hat to Norham Castle and thanked Norham Castle for being the fount of his success and of money that he'd made. So just to get back to the beginning of your question, his sketchbooks, they were his brain, his memory, his diary, his journal, his source for all his life. And it's extremely interesting that he went to Italy quite late on because of the Napoleonic Wars closed Europe off, except briefly in 1802 when he managed to go as far as Aosta. But you couldn't get to Italy. No one could really get to Italy until after 1815. But it happened because of other pressures on his life. He himself did not get to Italy until 1890, where he was almost certainly, it's not proved, but almost certainly on a commission from the Prince Regent, who never paid anybody anything, so this didn't come to him, but Prince Regent commissioned him to make drawings, to be watercolour paintings of scenes all the way around Rome. And there are at least 75 or 80 sketchbook drawings of different kinds of different subjects and different states of completion. Some absolutely completed, some just sketches. And these he very assiduously and energetically drew on the spot in different points in Rome. They did not, in the end, turn out to be the series of watercolours and engravings that he was expecting. So he lost business on that. But after he got back home in January of 1820, one of the first things he appears to have done is look at his sketchbooks and start to number them and put them in order. And the interesting thing is to try to work out when he started doing this was that number one, sketchbook number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are all of the Roman subjects of 1819. And then the numbering starts to become, goes back to earlier books. And so what we can draw from this is that coming back from Italy gave him the impetus to organise his life, to tidy up, because he was notoriously untidy. Tidy the studio, get his sketchbooks in order, so he could start working on the beginnings of a series of watercolours which was being engraved, which put his work out, and which began to make him began to put his name around, and which began to bring him in some income. So the so the result of organising his sketchbooks was to enable them to become more useful to him. I've forgotten entirely what the question was. Yes, who would I throw out? Well, I wouldn't throw Turner out, okay. Constable, well, again, Protean, but in a much smaller range, geographically. Turner travelled as far south as Paestum, below south of Naples. But he, as far as we know, again, is further south than that. He travelled east as far as Prague, Copenhagen, Prague. He travelled west in the British Isles, St David's. Not much of the west coast of Scotland, but St David's, Anglesey. And incidentally, there is nowhere in Britain, in England and Wales, that is more than 40 miles, I think it is, and even less than that, 30 or 40 miles from a Turner subject. Wherever you live, I should have looked up, shouldn't I? What's the nearest one here?
Bedford.
Well,
He did do Bedford.
Bedford, there is Bedford.
Yeah, it's not a very good one though, I have to say.
That's right. Well, never mind. You probably wasn't here long enough. Okay. Anyway, you don't have to travel very far in Britain. In fact, it's as an island, where no one is very far from the sea, but you are nearer, you are closer to a Turner subject than you are to the sea. Well, anyway, I forgot what I was going to say. Yes, okay. Constable entirely also Protean, but in a different way. Constable's travels were much more restricted. He was much more. He was local. He was local in terms of intensely drawing, painting, and being in particular areas. So, of course, Suffolk, East Bergholt, Langham, Dedham, that area. Not very much further north. There's a bit of Norwich, but not very much. Suffolk, southern, southeast Suffolk, and North Essex. Hampstead, when he lived there. Brighton, where he sent Marat for recuperation, for her TB. And Wiltshire, Salisbury, a bit of Dorset. So, apart from one brief visit to the Lake District, where he wasn't very happy and was, where he said, the solitude of mountains depresses my spirit, or something like that, and he didn't draw mountains again. And they are rather, they're fairly monosyllabic as drawings, watercolors. It didn't grasp him as a place to be. So, whereas Turner travelled everywhere, exploding like a flower across Europe, Turner's travels more or less east-west, horizontal between the mouth of the star and Salisbury, taking in Brighton as an excursion, as going to Brighton often is. So the intense quality of Constable's work and life is in a very narrow geographical area, or groups of areas. Turner, by contrast, his area is huge. And there was, towards the 1840s, he got to know a well-travelled photographer called Joseph Mayle, M-A-Y-A-L-L, who had a photography business in London. And there's evidence that as an older man, Turner went to visit him and dressed up got himself photographed. I'm not quite sure how true that is, but it's well documented. But interestingly, no suitable photographs have survived, seem to have survived that show Turner. There are one or two, but vague. Anyway, Mayle had spent the beginnings of his career in Philadelphia, on the east coast of America, and had photographed the Niagara Falls. Presumably he showed Turner what he'd done. And Turner was fascinated by the rainbow on the falls and quizzed him about how he managed to get it, what it looked like, blah, 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 blah. And he showed a huge desire to go to America. And he was such an energetic traveller. Once the Royal Academy exhibition was hung in late April, early May, and once all the hoopla and ooh-la-la of the dinners and all that sort of stuff was over, he would take off. He'd go to France, he'd go to Italy, he'd go to Germany, he'd go to Scotland, where it might be. Turner was invisible in London in the summer. There was I think it was 1 year in which he was, he twisted his ankle, he broke his leg, or he fell over or something, I don't know, I can't remember. He was ill, and he was champing at home all summer, longing to get away. And he longed to go to America, but never did. Interestingly, he never got to Ireland either. Well, not to the Romans, so there it is. He didn't get around. There is a note in one of the letters, surviving letters, in which he talks about Hibernia and how it would be nice to get to Hibernia. I'm sorry, I'm letting you down. I can't actually remember what exactly it was. But anyway, it's all very well saying. And listening place he didn't go to, but anyway, he didn't go around the UK, he didn't go to America, but he would have wanted to. He saw himself, interestingly, as a great traveller. He was a great traveller. And he saw, in a way, he saw himself as a kind of Ulysses, another great traveller, going from place to place, gathering, in his case, imagery and coming up with paintings to work on during the autumn and winter. And when he told his crazy stories about being tied to the mast, so to see a storm in the painting a snowstorm, when he was asked about it, he said, and he would do this. He tended to cloud. His images were clear enough, but he tended to cloud his explanation. He wouldn't explain them really. And he said, "Oh yes, I was in that storm. They tied me to the mast, and I told them not to cut me down. I told them to keep me tied so I could really see the storm." And so was that effect. And of course, that is exactly what happened. What Ulysses demanded when he was going past the islands of the sirens. He wanted to hear them sing, as you remember, the sirens sang to sailors, and they lured their ships onto the rocks, covered beasts. So, in the same way that Homer's Ulysses was tied to a mast, so in emulation of Ulysses, Turner told the world that he too was had been tied to a mast. He wasn't. Forget it. He'd be dead if they'd done that. He was in his 60s. He had a very bad chest and all that. He was rheumatic and so on and so on and so on. He would undoubtedly die if they tied him off. So, forget it. One criticism I had of Mike Leach Japanese film, Mr. Turner, which actually knows I said to him, look, don't tie his mast. It didn't happen. He said, it's a film, James, it's a film. I can't make a film about Turner without tying to the mast. So there we are, you get James Ball tied to the mast. And it's a myth, but never mind, keep the myth going. So, Turner travelling everywhere. Constable, very small, restricted area. Partly in Constable's case, restricted area, because he found so much to see in a tiny, tiny space. This tiny space of Hampstead, the tiny space of the Star Valley. He could see the world. He could see he could see the universal in the local. His paintings of Salisbury Cathedral also very localized, but also they have a universal side to them. I haven't spoken about Gainsborough's context. He was also not much of a traveller. Brought up in Suffolk, born in Suffolk, set to London as a likely talented lad. One of his uncles gave him some money to get an apprenticeship. He was sent to London, where he would have met Hogarth and that generation of it, and learned a great deal. Then came back to Suffolk and then to Bedford, and then by a series of probably lucky meetings with absolute charlatan, got himself to Bath, where as a very by the time he went to Bath, he was quite well known as a portrait painter in Ipswich, but it was a very closed society. His Ipswich portraits are really quite tight. He began to open up, and let me see if we can get back to the wonderful double portrait of the Howes, Admiral Howe, have I missed it? Have I gone past it? No. These were painted in Bath. At last he's beginning to relax and beginning to fill a wide space. As you see, it wasn't, as you can tell, it wasn't a particularly happy marriage. He was always at sea, and was rather jealous of his dashing wife. And although these men were not together for very long, Lady Howes knows is that Kenwood, like our Howes, private area still. The horizons are long, but are different. The type of landscape is different. The mood is different. He got on much better with her than with him. He was a ladies' man, no doubt about it. And he loved the suck and the swish of silk and fabric. So these paintings in Bath, he broke out of a rather tight manner that we saw in the earlier portraits, which are both quite small. The portrait of Joshua Kirby is, as you can tell, cut down. There wasn't much more, to be a bit more shoulder and a bit more background, but probably not much more to see. But as you see, they're closely wrought and kind of provincial. So in Bath, he began to see the great world. He began to get to be understood and to get business from the great good who came to Bath with their money and their pride and their vanity, and got themselves painted by the great new character of the great new talent of Gilbert. So Bath lifted him up, and his travels, he travelled back and forth to London, but the landscape paintings of the Bath period are much more studio-based. They're imaginary. They're not really of anywhere. They're of an idea, of an ideal. I should read what was mentioned there. Look better. They're inventions, which suggests that the travel he did was in his mind. So, which will I leave out of? Which will I chuck out of the room? Well, I leave them to fight it out. I'm not going to take it. I think they were both so much in honour, and they were so much in awe of Gainsborough that they would take an instant decision to hold on to him. And then they look at each other and say, well, one of you jump, who's going to jump out? Perhaps they'll both jump out themselves and leave him in the balloon, out of respect for the wisdom of age. Thank you.
Just on behalf of Bedford School and everyone here, I'd like to thank James for a hugely fascinating talk and call for another round of applause.